Okay, Nick and Andy, let's preview and predict what's going to happen in these big FA Cup semi-finals taking place at Wembley. Two intriguing games, and I don't think many of us would have picked these being the semi-final matchups when the competition started, but it's brilliant to see. Crystal Palace against Aston Villa on Saturday, and then Nottingham Forest against Manchester City. Let's start with Palace against Villa first, Nick. Is it fair to say it's very clear that Villa are the favourites heading into this one? Because Palace on their day, I think we've said it before on the show, great cup team, can beat absolutely anybody when they're on it. And they've had Villa's number. If you look at recent results over this season, they've done a job on them several times. So Villa will be confident, but they will be very wary as well of what Palace can do to them.
Yeah, I certainly like Villa as the more superior team here. Whenever the underdog has tremendous in-form attackers, I always feel a whole lot better about those players potentially getting the job done and getting an upset. Eze has been fantastic for much of this year. I really like him. And I'm going to make a joke here, but the underlying joke is about the player's talent. Jean-Philippe Mustache is what I'm going to call him, because that thing is magnificent. The goal he scored against Arsenal is art. It is science. How did it find a ceiling and hover there before dipping under the bar? Andy said it. And going back to the Olympics, which I had a lot of focus on because I was working for our NBC Olympics at the time. He looked like a man amongst boys. And this year, it's not a U23 tournament. It looks like a man amongst men. Age 27. That in-form center forward can change a tie. And that's why I think this is a little closer than it should be.
Andy, you agree with that, mate?
Yeah, I do. I don't love Palace's form coming into this one. Obviously, stealing the draw late against, Arsenal is going to give them a little bit of a lift. And for Mateta to play such an important part in doing that off the bench is certainly not bad. But a 0-0 with Bournemouth, a 5-0 against Newcastle a couple of weeks ago. It's been a little up and down, I think, under Glasner in his first season. But Nick's right. You have one or two even individuals in the team that are playing to the level that Eze and Mateta are. I think you have to give them a chance. And on Mateta, it's not just the goals that he's scoring either. He's a great outlet to release pressure. He's great with the hold up and getting everybody else involved. I do think that he'll probably give, whether it's Ezri Konsa and Pau Torres or whoever that starts at center back for Villa, they're going to have a real shift to work and fight against him for 90 or maybe even 120 minutes. So, but yeah, like you say, Joe, having these two ties that we do completely off the radar. This is, I think, a little bit of maybe the magic of the cup coming back this season, because it's not just the biggest names in the game.
Yeah, I love it. And I think you're right to focus on Mateta there, because he brings in Eze and Sarr underneath him and just occupies so much space. But I actually fancy Villa to kind of take care of him a little bit. I mean, I was thinking of the game I was at Villa Park recently against Newcastle, and Isak, we know how great he is in great form and how he loves to hold the ball up and they did a job on him that day. And Tyrone Mings, I think, was actually, he might come into the team. And the one thing Villa do have is that they both played midweek, right? They were away at Man City, lost late on. Palace were away at Arsenal. But I think Villa have that ability to be fresher and make more changes. And they have, two great players for every position. I think that's what puts them in a good spot for this game in particular, to start fast. Ollie Watkins, I would imagine, would definitely start after not starting in midweek. So, I do like Villa in this one, but you cannot ever underestimate Crystal Palace. I feel like whenever I have throughout this season, then Mateta will pop up with a big goal. Eze will bend one in from 25 yards out and just create a moment of magic with an assist out of nowhere. But I think Villa's high line defensively they usually play will make this game even closer than it should be, just the way that Palace play. And I think that's why Palace have had some success against them this season, because tactically, that's just, it suits them better. But also Unai Emery, we know how great he is in these one-off situations. He will have learned a lot from those defeats to Palace. And, he's got a trick or two up his sleeve, be it with personnel he's going to pick to surprise us, or maybe changing things a little bit. So yeah, it's going to be fun though, because both these two teams are desperate to win the FA Cup. So it's going to be a really fun opening semi-final. Nick Mandola, Nottingham Forest against Manchester City. Let's move on to the second of the FA Cup semi-finals this weekend. I mean, Pep Guardiola is feeling it, right? His reaction to the midweek win against Villa in the Premier League was like they'd won the Champions League again. He was all over the place. They're obviously in a good place in terms of new players really bedding in now, getting Kevin De Bruyne almost back up to his speed and back up to his best or closer to it. But then Forest, they aren't going away either, are they? They beat Tottenham. We thought they were going to really fall out of the Champions League picture, but they're not. They're there. Seems like just City's defensive structure is better, but it has to be at the top level, right, to stop these counters from Forest. And that's kind of the key to this game. Can City be trusted defensively? And will Forest have one of those days where they're clinical? Because they've beaten City 1-0 recently at the City ground in the Premier League. So they've shown that they can do it against Pep Guardiola's side. What do you think for this one?
Well, it's funny, too, that the nice little corollary that we're hearing with some rumors, of course, just rumors about Morgan Gibbs-White potentially being a Kevin De Bruyne replacement at Man City, or one of the guys who could do that job. And honestly, imagine that guy with freedom. However, I look at this, and what I see is this weird sort of thing we see with very good teams where strange things snap them out of their lull. And there is something in seeing Pep Guardiola react that way and the players react that way. I'm not saying they're back or that they're going to be, world beaters, or they don't need 4 new players in the summer. But if they have that edge can overcome bad days. And it just does kind of feel like maybe they have a little bit of a bleep this moment in them, to pardon my phrase there. And maybe that'll be enough, because I do think pound for pound, Man City is pun intended with the pound for pound, just a better, deeper team than Forest.
It's true, right, Andy? But we saw Forest, the way they can hang in there in games. I mean, Spurs dominated them, created lots of chances. They rode their luck. But that's been Forest all season long, right? They know what they're good at. They start games fast. They score. They get up. They're okay with sitting back deep and defending in, a back five. If they're ahead, they always switch to that for the most part. So, again, like we said with Palace, they're a good cup team in Forest case, right? In a game situation like this, they're going to be patient. So, can you see, is it an upset? Because obviously they're right there with City in the table, but it would be, right, an upset if Forest beat them in the moment that City are in at the moment?
Yeah, of course it would be. It's Nottingham Forest, all due respect, in Manchester City. It would be a massive upset. You ask 100 people and you'll get 97 that are going to say City will win this one comfortably. They'll win it easily. I do think, though, we saw a little bit of, and obviously Forest have their own blueprint, but for what we saw from Villa in the first, 20, 25 minutes or so of that game against City the other night, that plays into Forest's hands right there. Marcus Rashford hit the post after 20 seconds in that game, and it was just a quick, very direct, straight up the field into the penalty area, and nobody really seemed to want to step to him and make a play. Ruben Diaz had, I think he was the one that got twisted this way, that way on that one, and then he's the one that cut down, was it Jacob Ramsey for the penalty? And so there are still some, I think, some just lapses defensively that we've seen from City. And you don't really associate that with Pep's team because they're all about control. But the positions of need that City have, just kind of looking to the summer coming up, are so incredibly glaring. And it's kind of that whole right side of defense over there. And so, there will be plenty of opportunities, whether it's Alanga, whether it's Hudson-Odoi, coming in off of that left side to, go one-on-one, beat somebody. Like you say, Forest have done this all season long. I don't think anybody expected them to still be where they are in the Premier League table at this point of the season.
It's true. All right, Nick, put you on the spot, mate. Who are the two teams who make it to the final?
City and Villa. I just don't feel like going on a limb. In our PSG, I went on a limb and I picked them to win at Arsenal, and I'm not going to do that twice. So simply going chalk, bro.
Andy, you doing the same?
Yeah, I think so. Just the depth of both City and Villa when you compare them to who they're up against, there is a route for both of the upsets in these two semifinal ties, but just about any other way that the games play out favors, the favorite, if you will.
Yeah. I'm going to make it 3. Yeah, I think Villa and City. I wanted to say there'd be upsets here. I think it'll be close. It wouldn't surprise me if it goes to extra time and even penalty kicks both of these games. I think it will be that kind of tense and nervous.
Well, how about this, guys? How about this? Each of us pick, if there's going to be an upset,
Okay.
what would you pick?
I'd actually pick Forest.
Would you? I think I'd pick Palace.
Yeah, I'd pick Palace as well.
All right. There we go. We've got some different
Tasty.
answers there. Head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for all the latest on the FA Cup semi-finals. 2 massive games, intriguing games, different type of games for these showpiece occasions at Wembley. Cannot wait for this one to see who makes it to the final. Head over to PST and we'll have you covered.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Lowe, and as we head towards the end of an exciting Premier League season, make sure you like and subscribe on the NBC Sports YouTube channel for more content like this.